Chapter 25. Ben shouldn't have made promises he couldn't keep. "We'll find some gold tomorrow," he had said, and he'd been so certain. But then, Bobbie was certain that her undead brother wasn't going to devour them in their sleep, and that remained to be seen. Ben had awoken to the unsettling grunts and groans of Johnny as he strained at his lead. Bobbie insisted he was just bored. Zombies apparently didn't sleep, but Ben thought the half-pint Helen looked hungry. They decided to get some distance from the lava before starting the day's mining. They ended up in a dripstone cave with massive stalactites that dripped with moisture. Ben couldn't shake the feeling that they looked like fangs bearing down on him from above. After hours of digging, they had a little to show for the efforts: a few chunks of raw copper, some iron, and a lot of coal. Not useless by any means, but not what they were looking for. "I don't understand," said Ben. "I've had some bad luck before, but this is ridiculous." "I might have something over here," said Bobbie, and she beckoned him to follow her around a stony corner. Johnny, tied to his post, growled, but stayed put. Bobbie had found a chamber of smooth purple. The material glittered beneath the torchlight. "It's an amethyst geode," Ben said. "There should be clusters of gems here." He ran his hand over the flat, featureless purple. But it's all been harvested already." "I did find one piece," Bobbie said, and she held out a single shard of the purple gemstone. "It was lying on the floor in the shadows, like someone had missed it." "In the shadows?" said Ben. "Yeah, that's the other thing," Bobbie said. She pointed to a torch. "I didn't put that there. Is that normal?" It was not normal, but it certainly explained some things. "It's the woodland mansion all over again," he said. "Somebody's been through here already. They scorched the place. They scoured the place took and took all the good stuff." He shook his head. "Probably a group of people working together to have been so thorough." "So we're out of luck," said Bobbie. All the gold is gone." "We will find gold," Ben said. Despite his resolution to stop making promises, "we just might have to travel a little farther than I planned." "Can I have that amethyst shard?" Bobbie handed it over. "Is it worth something?" "It's useful," Ben answered, turning it around in his hands. "With this and the copper I dug up earlier, we can craft a spyglass." He stashed the shard in his inventory. "I don't like being underground for so long, and our little river ride got me all turned around. I think we should head back to the surface and see where we are." He shrugged. "Maybe we can find a badlands biome. You can find gold above ground there sometimes, in the mountains. In the mountains." "I like the sound of that," Bobbie said. "Only—" "What?" asked Ben. You have to break the news to Johnny," she said, pulling the carved pumpkin from her inventory. "He really hates this thing." Making their way up to the surface took longer than it had taken to carve a path down. Rather than cut blindly through stone and risk hitting a lava flow, Ben opted to build a staircase. They were deep enough that it took some time, and it took more time to Johnny up the staircase, one hop after another. Bobbie was practically dragging him at one point, pumping him in and all. If Ben didn't know better, he'd think the zombie boy was pouting. Don't be so glum. That pumpkin really suits you, Ben told him. It brings out the beady little intensity in your blood-red eyes. Johnny growled and swiped in Ben's direction, and Ben laughed. Please stop taunting him, Bobbie said to Ben. And you, she said, turning to Johnny. No hitting, no fussing. The pumpkin is for your own good. We have no idea whenever when, whenever it's day or night up there. When he finally broke through dirt to feel the sun on his face, Ben experienced a wave of relief. Ah, sweet sunlight, he said. I always forgot what it felt like. Bobbie blinked furiously. Me too, she said. I feel like I've been holding my breath for days. Nothing to fear up here, not while the sun is up, Ben said, hopping up onto the grass and offering her a hand. No, no phantoms, no skeletons, no zombies. Present company excluded, he added as Johnny clambered up behind Bobbie. It's an undead-free existence as long as that beautiful yellow square is shining down on us. Let's then, then let's move quickly, Bobbie said, because in my experience the weather can change in a blink of an eye. The weather remained bright and clear. However, as the trio continued to climb, Ben knew that they'd have to get some altitude in order to get the lay of the land. And as luck would have it, the overworld had provided, in the form of a nearby mountain, a nearby, quite steep mountain, up and down and up again, complained Bobbie. The life of an individual is exhausting. Imagine how your brother feels, said Ben. He's the first zombie who's ever had a list of rules to follow. And he's doing so well, said Bobbie, and she patted him on his round orange helm. At last, they reached the peak of the mountain. Ben got right to work, sitting down at a crafting table, pulling his materials together, and getting hit in the face with a snowball. Blah, he said. Bobbie's laugh tinkled on the icy air. Ben, it's snow! Snow! I can see that, Ben said, wiping the snow off his face. And I can also taste it. What's the big idea? Then, as he watched her hopping and prancing and wandering around like a deranged pig, he realized something. You've never seen snow before? He said. Nope, said Bobbie, and she laughed. It's sort of amazing. Better than lava, anyways. Anyway, it's all right, Ben said, but he smiled. Despite himself, he'd seen plenty of snow and tended to think of it as an obstacle, if he thought of it at all. But seeing Bobbie prancing around, it was not hard to imagine it through her eyes. It was sort of magical. Even Johnny, tied to his post, seemed entranced as the snow creaked beneath his feet. Bobbie lobbed another snowball at him, and he dodged it. No fair, he said, laughing. I don't have a shovel. Who said I was interested in a fair fight? She asked, sticking her tongue out. Her third snowball was aimed gently at Johnny, who appeared utterly confused by the entire thing. Ben got back to Ben got back to business, working the copper and amethyst into a functioning spyglass. With the new tool in hand, he stepped to the edge of the peak and gazed outward. Bobbie, huffing with exertion, trudged through the snow to stand behind him. She gasped. The overworld! It's so big, she said. From up here, it looks just like one of the Cartographer's Haven's map. One of Cartographer Haven's maps. This is nothing, Ben said as he peered through the spyglass. I've been exploring for years, and I haven't seen a fraction of the overworld. It's bigger than I can ever wrap my head around. Ben handed her the spyglass and watched as she spun to look in every direction. I didn't see any balance out there. I didn't see any balance out there, he told her, but there are some other biomes we might want to check out. I saw a desert, and if there's a pyramid there, we can find some good loot. What about that village? Said Bobbie. Village? Where? There, she said, pointing, and she handed him the spyglass. You can just see it through the trees. I see it now, said Ben. Good eye, only. What is that? Just beyond the village, rising above it, was a fearless gray monolith. Now that he noticed it, Ben could see it even without the spyglass. It was that big and out of place. How do you feel about a little detour? He asked Bobbie. Those people might need help, she said, so just try to keep me away. Chapter 26. Ben was determined not to get his hopes up. The village in the distance will almost certainly be as devastated as the last two villages he found. Then again, Plaintown had provided an unexpected bounty. Bobbie herself. Maybe this village too will have survivors. Maybe they find a new ally, even amidst devastation. But as they drew closer to the village, Ben kept the real mystery at the forefront of his mind. Do you see it? He asked. The gray building at the back. Bobbie peered ahead, past the inviting spruce and stone structures, and her eyes found the boxy cobblestone monstrosity illumined behind the village proper. I see it, she confirmed. Any closer to figuring out what it is? Your guess is as good as mine. Ben sighed and pulled out his sword. But let's be ready for trouble again. A fence ringed the village. That too was unusual, although Ben had often wondered why more villages didn't put up some sort of dis- defensive perimeter. It makes sense in a dangerous world to put barriers between yourself and the monsters, but Ben noticed there were no gates along the length of the fence, and he had to wonder, was it here to keep unwanted visitors out? Or was it here to keep something inside from escaping? Bobbie cut through the fence without hesitating. Look at you, Ben said. Ben said, from fence mender to fence dismantler in a few short days. That's me, said Bobbie. Bobbie, Bobbie, smiter of fences. But Ben noticed that as soon as they all passed through, Bobbie replaced the broken piece. He smiled. He didn't actually want her to change. Not too much. This is way too familiar, Ben said, approaching the first building. Its doors had been blown off its hinges. Bobbie saw them again. Said nothing. Yup, Ben said, confirming that the home's chest was empty. Looks like the same deal as before. Wait, Bobbie said. Something's different this time. Ben watched her as she turned in a slow circle, taking in the details of the home. She narrowed her eyes, obviously struggling to put her suspicions into words. Finally, her eyes lit up. The bed, she said. There's no bed. That's strange. Ben said. Were any beds missing from the last town? Not that I noticed, said Bobbie. Let's check next door, Ben suggested. It was the same situation in the next house, and the one after that. The entire village appeared of the entire village appeared empty of villagers, loot, and beds. As they explored, they drew ever nearer to the stone structure. "No more putting it off," said Ben. "We need to find out what's inside." He began walking around the perimeter, stopping at the first corner, which gave him a view of two sides of the four-sided building. "I don't see any windows, but there's a door." Bobbie and Johnny followed close behind. As he approached the iron door, he pressed his ear against it. "Anything?" asked Bobbie. Ben shook his head. "It's too thick." He eyed the button beside the door. "Should I open it?" Bobbie tied Johnny to his post. You behave out here," she said. "We'll be right back." Then, at her signal, Ben pressed the button. Immediately, they could hear voices echoing within the building. It sounded like villagers, and they were in distress. Spurred by the sounds, Bobbie hurried past him, and he followed her. "Careful," she told him, putting her up her arms so that he wouldn't rush ahead. Ben felt a rush of vertigo as he realized they were standing on a narrow stone platform set above a deep chasm. There were plentiful torches set above the space, providing light in lieu of any windows. But there was also light coming from below. Ben recognized the telltale glow of lava. The staircase led down from the platform, but for now they ignored that. Straight ahead in the center of the space was something that demanded their immediate attention. "Zombies," said Ben. There were two of them, and they soon caught sight of Ben and Bobbie. Groaning and grasping, they stepped forward, but they were stopped by the fence that ringed them, encloses them, upon their own separate platform of stone. The zombies, mindless, didn't seem to realize that they were trapped within a core that Ben and Bobbie were forever out of reach. The only other features within the room were the cells, four of them in total, one in each corner of the structure. Ben could see right inside them, because the walls were made of glass. They were like giant aquariums, but instead of fish, they contained people. Five villagers stood imprisoned in each glass box, each with their own bed and nothing more. Bobbie gasped. "We have to get them out of there." "I'm with you," said Ben, "but let's be careful about it." He peered over the edge of the platform toward the warm glow of lava below. They briefly considered constructing walkways to the glass cells, but Ben's vertigo threatened to get the best of him. In the end, they decided to come at the problem from another direction, going back outside and then cutting into the cells from the exterior of the building. They harried villagers. The hurried villagers honked at one another, and at Ben and Bobbie, making a great racket in their relief and gratitude. One at a time, please," said Bobbie. "We're here to help, but we need to understand what happened here." Ben, realizing he was of no use in communicating with the villagers, slipped away, returning to the inside of the building. Moving slowly, he descended the interior staircase, curious to see where it would lead. He wasn't surprised to find a small pool of lava below, but he was surprised to see something moving within it. Surprised and horrified. It was an iron golem. It was on fire, struggling to keep its head above the lava even as it burned. Ben instinctively reached out to it, but what could he do? Even if he could reach it in time, he'd only doom himself to a fiery death by touching it. He was too late anyway. As he watched, the light in his eyes went dark. It melted to slag. A smear of silver swirled amidst the incandescent orange. The stairs descended deeper, and so did Ben. Below the lava, which had been contained within a glass pit, there was a series of hoppers functioning like funnels. The hoppers had been set up to sort materials that fell into from above. The hoppers, in turn, fell to a treasure chest. Ben opened the chest, suspecting that he knew what he'd find. He was right, but the sheer quantity of it staggered him. Within the chest, he found neat stacks of iron ingots, thousands of iron ingots. This place had been built with one thing in mind: harvesting golems for the iron. Thousands of ingots meant that hundreds of golems had met a fiery end, much like the one Ben had just witnessed. His heart felt heavy at the thought. Ben, said a voice. He turned to see Bobbie watching from the stairs. What did you find? Iron. A lot of it, he said. The villagers must have been making golems constantly. Did you learn anything from them? From what I could understand, there was a zombie attack. They tried to flee, but someone had built a fence around the entire village. They were herded toward this building and then trapped. They'd been kept here for weeks. And how did they feel about it? Bobbie frowned. They felt scared. That's why those zombies were up there with them, said Ben. With the glass walls, the villagers felt constantly threatened by the zombies, and as long as they felt that way, they were willing to make golems. He pointed at the pool of lava, which appeared to float above them in its glass enclosure. The golems were melted to slag, and the hobbits funneled the remains into the chest. Bobbie's mouth was a thin line. This is so typical, she said. It's just like adventurers. It's just like the adventurers to exploit villagers, to treat them like they don't matter. I've seen it happen all my life. Ben almost felt the need to apologize, but he had never taken things this far, even if it was sort of brilliant in a way. Do the villagers know who did this? He asked. I think there are at least two of them, Bobbie answered. They come back to collect the iron every few nights. She paused, then added, They should be due back tonight, in fact. That's good news, because I really like to meet them. But first, he opened the chest and grabbed a handful of ingots. I think we're overdue for some new gear, don't you? Chapter 27. Ben tried hard not to think about where his new armor had come from. He was still haunted by the sight of the iron golem as it melted right before his eyes. But there was no bringing the golem back, and putting the iron to use themselves meant depriving the iron farm's masterminds of their spoils. Although once he heard them speak, Ben immediately decided that mastermind was far too generous. It was night, and Ben and Bobbie had perched atop the roof of the nearest house. From the vantage point, they had a good view of the iron factory, but would themselves be difficult to spot. They secured Johnny in one of the houses a bit further down the path, where his growls wouldn't draw attention. The villagers lay hidden behind a newly constructed wall in the village temple. If anyone went looking for them, they'd come up empty, unless that person had a comprehensive knowledge of the temple's blueprint. And the pair who came around to collect the day's iron did not strike Ben as the type to have comprehensive knowledge of anything. Dude, said one of them, seeing the multiple holes in the factory. What happened? Doesn't look good, said the other. Check inside. You check inside, was the response. At length, one of them at last went inside. Ben crept to the edge of the roof to get a better look at the one who stayed behind. It was a girl, and she looked tough, with muscular arms and cold eyes. She had a diamond axe at her side. As Ben and Bobbie watched, the second one emerged from the factory. He was weary, with an edgy, swarming sort of energy. Like a taut string, He wielded a crossbow and a frown. "It's no good, Hatchet," he said, bouncing from foot to foot. We've been robbed." "What do you mean?" "The iron, too?" "The iron, too?" "Yeah," he said. "Villagers are gone, iron's gone, just an empty chest down there." He shrugged. "Zombies are still there." "Well, that's something at least," said Hatchet. "I hate to tell the boss we lost any of his pets." But Ben and Bobbie exchanged a look. On the one hand, the idea that these two had a boss made some sense. They definitely gave off hired muscle vibes. But zombies as pets, who would think that was a who would think that was a good idea? "Let's load them up," said Hatchet, "and check the traps on the way back." Bobbie gave Ben a questioning look, but he could only shrug. He waited for the two strangers to disappear into the factory. Then he leaned over to whisper, "I want to follow them, but let's keep our distance." Bobbie nodded. Soon the two figures reappeared. This time they were pursued by the pair of zombies. With practiced speed, they stayed out of reach of the zombies, but close enough to draw the mobs forward. "Get the trapdoor, Flip," said Hatchet, and the wiry one darted ahead to open a hinged door that had been set into the ground. Hatchet led the zombies to the edge of it, then punched them, knocking them into the opening. Flip giggled. "Nice," he said. "Safer than using my axe," said Hatchet. "Don't want to do any permanent damage, right?" "I still think we could spare one or two," Flip said, and he jumped into the hole. Hatchet followed immediately after, shutting the trapdoor behind her. Bobbie exhaled. Ben knew how she felt. He almost been afraid to breathe. The trapdoor had brought the mercenaries precisely close to the hiding spot. Ben waited a few moments before he slid off the roof and padded over to the trapdoor. Now that he'd seen it in action, he wondered how he missed it before. Echoing his thoughts, Bobbie whispered, "We must have walked right over that thing." Ben pressed his ear to it. He agonized over how long to wait. He did not want to run afoul of those two, but if he waited too long, they'd get away. Unless they were immensely careless, they'd be impossible to track once they were underground. Finally, he couldn't stand to wait any longer. He opened the door. His jaw dropped at what he saw. Just below ground, there was a cobblestone tunnel with torches placed at regular intervals and a rail. Said Ben, "that looks very familiar." He looked up, his eyes meeting Bobbie's, and he saw her gaze harden as she put the pieces together. "Ben, tell me if I'm wrong," she said, "but I'm beginning to think maybe the seeds that destroyed my village, it wasn't an accident," said Ben.